Hey guys, welcome back. The 5th episode of the Halo TV series has finally released, and it's a major improvement over the last 3 episodes that we saw thus far, which has mostly been focused on character development. While that's all well and good, it's about time we've got to see some Halo action, and especially seeing as we get more Covenant races in this episode. Now before we proceed, I think I owe you guys a little explanation. Last week I decided not to make a video for episode 4, and simply put, there wasn't really much Covenant stuff in it. There was no Maki scenes, and there wasn't really any Covenant scenes to really break down. Sure, there was some Dead Let Go Low in Miranda's lab, and we got to learn some new Sangheili words, but really, there wasn't really much to break down. But thankfully, this episode more than provides a lot of Covenant stuff in here. So, what are we waiting for? Let's break it all down. The first major Covenant scene we have in this episode is based on Magical, the dig site from the first Keystone that we saw in episode 1. Now before we go forward, let's look at the Phantom here. It definitely shares the chassis of Halo Reach's Phantoms, but it shares the extra plasma turrets on the sides, similar to Halo 2 Anniversaries. It seems like they're mixing the two patterns of the Phantoms into the show. I wonder in the Silver timeline, this is the T-52 model Phantom, and not the older versions that we saw in Halo 4. Now within the dig site, several Sangheili are using their luminaries to find any traces of the second Keystone. When a Sangheili warrior informs Maki that they haven't really found anything, Maki stresses the importance on finding the second Keystone and encourages the warrior to keep looking. But as the Sangheili warrior is returning to his work, Maki reassures him, or more likely herself, that they share an enemy, the humans, and by finding the second Keystone, they'll find the Sacred Ring and destroy their enemies. It seems like Maki is questioning herself, and by reassuring the warrior, she is also reassuring herself and her commitment to the Covenant. But moving on to Eridanus II, the UNSC is examining the second Keystone, but just as they're prepared to do their studies, a sound blast immobilizes most of the UNSC garrison there. And back on Magical, the Sangheili are noticing their luminaries glow with a signal, and Maki is feeling that same call on Eridanus II. And I think we all know what happens next. Within the last half of the episode, the Covenant arrives, destroying the UNSC destroyer Pioneer, and Covenant Banshees are raining down on the outpost. And like I said in my trailer breakdowns for this series, I originally thought they were going to be the mix of the Heshadoran Banshees from Halo 5 and the Reach variants. But it appears I was mistaken, and this is just the Reach variant. Not surprising, but As the Covenant aircraft immobilize the UNSC forces on Eridanus II, Master Chief and Silver Team prep the second Keystone on a Warthog, and as they're prepared to bring it to Miranda's Condor, a Covenant CCS-class battlecruiser appears overhead and drops down numerous Halo Reach-style drop pods. In it are grunts and jackals. And here, let's just take in how great the grunts and jackals look. The grunts are in their Halo 2 Anniversary appearance, and they just look amazing. I cannot stress enough how well they've done the Covenant in this show. Now the show can be crap for all I care, but as long as they keep the Covenant aesthetics on point, I won't really care. And they really done a great job here. I especially love the Ruti and Kig-Yar. This version actually makes me appreciate the Ruti and Kig-Yar more, as I've never been really much of a fan of that subspecies of jackals, as I am more in favor of the Halo 4 style jackals, the Ibishans. But anyway, as the Warthog is mowing through Covenant forces, a Marine takes some needle shots, and he gets splattered by the pink mist. I guess that goes to show what happens when you mess with the Needler gang, I guess. And that's not even the best part. An Ungoi hijacks a Warthog and tries to pilot the thing. At least he tries to until Chief hijacks him out of it. That is classic Halo if ever I done saw one. Now, as Kai is protecting the UNSC forces at the base, a Covenant Phantom drops in behind her and drops off more troops. And as more jackals are being dropped on the ground, they ignite energy daggers. We haven't seen energy daggers since the days of Halo Reach. They're basically the combat knives for the elites when you assassinate a target. And while it would have been nice to see energy cutlasses in the show, I am very glad they used the energy daggers in replacement. And the jackals make quick work of the Marines with these daggers. I mean, these guys are brutal. Not eating human flesh brutal, but brutal nonetheless. Now, as Captain Keyes and the UNSC Marines fight the Phantom, Kai is something of an episode, which isn't really surprising seeing as she removed her pellet in episode 4. She loses focus and pretty much collapses on the ground as Covenant forces are shooting at her. Master Chief sees this while driving a Warthog. He abandons the mission in order to save Kai. And as Vanek and Riz are driving to Halsey's ship, as Miranda's Condor was struck down by Covenant Banshees, a Banshee crashes their Warthog, leaving the second Keystone vulnerable. Master Chief hijacks a Banshee, but instead of yanking out the pilot, he rams the Banshee into the Phantom, causing a Halo 2 Covenant explosion and really messing up the jackals. I mean, I can't show you this half-dead jackal here, but let me tell you, it's pretty gruesome. Now, as the Covenant forces recover and press their attack on the UNSC again, Master Chief owns the grunts and jackals in classic Halo fashion, grabbing a plasma pistol and just obliterating everyone in his wake. Now, as all this is going down, a Sangheili warrior is brutally beating Kai, though I question why he's using only his fist and not an energy sword. That right there seems a bit odd to me. But just as the elite is beating up Kai, Master Chief comes to the rescue and absolutely brutally beats the Sangheili to death. And we see a bunch of Sangheili blood splatter all over his armor. I mean, damn, they really went all out on the MA rating. Now, as all this is going down, a Covenant Spirit launches from the Covenant cruiser and makes way for the Keystone. Now, as Chief is running to beat the Spirit to the Keystone, we are greeted with none other than a Jiro Hanai chieftain. I mean, that is something I was not expecting at all. And this brute absolutely kicks the absolute crap out of the Master Chief. And I have to say, they have done an amazing job with the Jiro Hanai in this show. Now, looking closer at this brute, I can't help but wonder if this is actually Atriox. His face looks nearly identical from how we saw him in Halo Wars 2, and hell, even in Halo Infinite. Though I wouldn't be surprised if this is the Silver Timeline version of either Tartarus or his uncle, Maccabeus. I say this because the hammer this brute is wielding, it kinda looks more like a mace. That being said, it does look vaguely similar to the Fist of Rukt, and it has that same gravity function that we saw in Halo 2. But regardless, I love the Jiro Hanai, it just looks absolutely amazing. Now, as the brute is standing over the Master Chief, he utters the words, and yeah, that's probably the only time we're probably gonna hear a Covenant speaking in English. Now, as the brute is carrying off with the Keystone on the Covenant Spirit, Master Chief fires at the dropship as it returns to the Covenant cruiser. But before they leave, they drop off none other than Maki. With Maki infiltrating the UNSC right now, I wouldn't be surprised if they take her to Reach. Maybe she'll even set the stage for a Fall of Reach version for the Silver Timeline. I would love to see that. Seeing as this episode had a lot of great action and gore, I can only imagine what Reach would be. It would probably be 10 times more grim than what we got in Halo Reach or Halo The Fall of Reach. And that's episode 5, Reckoning. And yeah, this was a really good episode. While I appreciate the plot-driven and character development episodes, it's a breath of fresh air that we got to see UNSC versus Covenant. Exactly the same as what we got from episode 1, and I really hope they continue this trend moving forward. I really hope the next couple episodes won't just be filler episodes than what we got thus far. I definitely loved the introduction of the grunts, jackals, and the surprise visit from the brute chieftain. And I just love the aesthetics for the Covenant all in all in this episode. But the weakest elements in this episode for me thus far is Quan's arc. Now don't get me wrong, I actually like Soren, but I mean, Quan is just not doing anything really. And I'm kind of mixed where Master Chief is at right now. I mean, before the Covenant attacked, John was ready to kill Dr. Halsey after discovering that she kidnapped him. I mean, it's understandable, but I mean, it's not fitting with Master Chief's arc, as we saw in the core canon. Some have liked this, but for me, it's just... But all in all, I really loved this episode. It had all the action sequences that I was hoping for, and it had a lot of Covenant action here. With that in mind, I give episode 5 Reckoning an 8.5 out of 10. It was such an enjoyable episode, and it definitely felt Halo to me. But what do you guys think? What was your favorite scene from this episode? Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, guys, may the eyes of the prophets watch down upon you all. Victory to clan and kin, Covenant fans. Covenant Canon out.